Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the nice introduction by you and for allowing me to speak here in front of this extraordinary audience here. I'm talking about solar farming in Africa, about desert tech, and I have not much time to explain it. So in simple words, it's that you put a solar panel into the desert, you take a long cable up to London, and then you collect your light bulbs here. That is the idea. At the first sight, it doesn't look as a very clever idea, but I have to warn you, we have connections now also to Asia and to South America, and we are infecting more and more people by this idea. And once you have understood the concept, it's very hard to get rid of this infection anymore. That's what I can tell you. So, but being serious, you all know we have an energy problem in the world, and that has two components. The one is that the world population is growing. The second is that the growing energy demand per capita is, especially in these countries where the poverty is now and where the emerging countries are, where we need more energy in the future. If you extrapolate, at the moment we have about 16,000 gigawatt energy demand at any moment. And in the 50 years, we have about 50% more. In addition, we want to get rid of the CO2 emissions to some fraction, and that means that we have to have a lot of new capacities. I put you the numbers in gigawatt, because that is a number where you know what the size means. 1 gigawatt is about the power which one nuclear power plant has. So the energy problem we have is that we need in the next 40 years about 15,000 new 1 gigawatt power plants. So if you would go nuclear, you would need 15,000 new nuclear reactors, which is one new reactor every day. So that tells you about the size of the problem, and a lot of us underestimate it. Desert tech, we could say, wants to use natural nuclear fusion. You all know the sun is a nuclear reactor. It does fusion every day. At the moment it's down, it's in maintenance, but tomorrow morning it will start again. The sun is highly radioactive. Fortunately, we have a safety distance of 150 billion kilometers, so we are safe here on the Earth. The only thing we still have to build are the solar dishes which collect the energy and convert it to electricity. Now something went off. Okay. I told you how big the energy problem of the mankind is. If you compare that to the solar power which is incident on the deserts in the world, you find out, even if you take into account the low efficiencies of these power plants, it's still that more than 20 times more than the energy which mankind needs is available if we would build a lot of power plants in the desert. So in principle, solar energy in desert is capable to solve the energy problem. The question is if this is possible in reality. Fortunately, people have been working on it. Last year, the first solar thermal power plant has been brought into operation in Cairo, in North Africa, in Egypt. And that shows that the technology also really works in the desert. It's nothing which is new. It has been, similar plants have been built in the 70s already in the United States, but this is one of the first ones in North Africa to show that it's also working there. The biggest problem of solar energy is that at night there is no sun. We cannot use the moon to produce electricity. So also here, these solar thermal power plants have a special meaning, a special importance, because they produce heat out of the solar energy, and this heat can be stored in a very cheap and efficient way. Here's an example in Spain. You see the big mirror field where the solar energy is concentrated and liquid is heated up. During the day, this heat is used to heat up another liquid. In this case, it's liquid salt, to 390 degrees of Celsius. You store this hot salt in a second tank here, and at night when the sun goes down, you use this hot salt to produce electricity overnight. So the solar thermal power plants have the big advantage that they can produce power day and night. That is the only advantage compared to photovoltaics, but it's an important advantage. How do we bring the power from Africa to Europe, or from Asia to Japan, or in South America? You can do similar things. When we started these ideas, maybe 20 years ago, we were thinking of producing hydrogen and transporting the hydrogen to Europe. Nowadays, with new technology, the things are much simpler. We just put a cable. You have high voltage cables, about 900 kilovolts. And these cables nowadays have the property that they have very low losses when you use direct current. The normal high voltage cables, which you see here in your country, they have AC, alternating current. The new technology uses DC, and the DC power losses are much less, about 10% for 3,000 kilometers. So it's no problem to build a supergrid in Europe where you connect all the countries in Europe, and in addition, you connect it to Africa. That is an example of a second technology. This is a solar thermal power plant which uses a tower. There you see all this mirror field. Each of these mirrors follows the motion of the sun. The light is focused on the center of this tower here, and there you have very high temperatures. You can have very efficient conversion of sunlight into electricity. This is how the things are developed at the moment. In future, there are even more interesting options. In the lab already it works that using these high temperatures together with catalytic reactions, you can produce synthetic fuels with that. For example, a process has been studied in the lab where you use the sunlight plus water plus CO2, and you produce alcohol from it and oxygen. These things work in principle, but at the moment these things are still very inefficient, and it's not possible to do it at industrial scale yet, but maybe in future. Now at the end I want to go to another aspect of Desertec, which is a geopolitical aspect of Desertec. You all know that we have a comparable high standard of living, and there's a large gradient towards North Africa, and that may produce problems in future, in addition, because there's a strong growing population there of young people. Also here, Desertec has an importance. Europe certainly profits from clean electricity from Africa, but maybe even more important, it can profit if we have a secure neighborhood there and get rid of all these problems which might be there in future with migration and so on. Africa needs energy, but in Africa even more important is water, because at the moment the North African countries in most cases live from fossil water which will be empty in a few 10 or 20 years, and there you need a seawater desalination. Seawater desalination can also be combined with the power from solar power plants, so that you, with the same plant, produce water and electricity. If you do that at large scale, you produce a lot of jobs in Europe and also in North Africa, and you give the young people in North Africa a perspective, so that these young democracies which are arising there at the moment have a chance to be a stable country in future. There have been many people doing these things scientifically in detail. I cannot explain that all at the moment here. The idea is you have certain areas in the desert which are very suitable for solar power plants. You have certain areas in Europe where you have a lot of electricity demand, like London or Paris, and then you just connect these points with DC lines. This is some kind of investment, but we believe, or we calculated, it's always cheaper to build a cable than to build an electricity storage. And by connecting, by having a supergrid across Europe, you average out a lot of the fluctuations which wind energy, for example, has, and solar power as well. You can discuss how expensive it will be. The costs are predicted to be something like 8 cents per kilowatt hours for the electricity which comes to London, for example. But of course, there are large uncertainties depending on how fast the degradation of prices is for solar power. Also, the Desertec Foundation has a project together with a company called Tunur, which is a British company and which has some Tunisian investors. They want to do one of the first cables across the Mediterranean to Rome, so that in a few years, if everything goes well, we could have the first electricity from Tunisia. I'm belonging to the Desertec Foundation, but in addition, there's this Desertec Industrial Initiative. There are many shareholders. Desertec Foundation is one, and of course, Deutsche Bank is one of the important ones. And in the last years, there are more and more associated members coming to this big industry initiative. By the way, next week, there's a big conference in Berlin where the whole project will be discussed at large scale. And these companies have made a rollout plan a few months ago where they really define how the project could be going on if people want that. The main problems, of course, are political problems. So to finish, Desertec, in our view, solves 4 key problems. It produces renewable and safe energy. It produces water by desalination. It produces a lot of new jobs as well in Europe as in Africa. And at the moment, we are exporting this idea to Asia and to South America. And we believe that here in Europe and Africa, this has peacekeeping incentives, because by this big industrial project, we produce development and economic cooperation between Africa and Europe, and that helps to stabilize the area. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Michael. I should just say, as part of its commitment to sustainability initiatives, Deutsche Bank is a co-founder and shareholder of DII GmbH, the industry initiative that supports Desertec. I'm going to kick off with a question while you're mulling a really difficult one. It seems to me, coming from a public policy angle, that everything speaks for what you suggest except for the geopolitics and the region and its instability and the natural concern about the impact of having to pump massive amounts of money and resource into an area which is so unstable. You said that you thought it would be jolly good for Africa, but the Middle East perhaps points in a different direction, that it can be a way these big projects can internationalize existing conflicts and instability. Do you have a quick thought on that?
Well, first of all, we will not start with having 100% energy from Africa. We will start with 15 or 20%. That is the idea until 2050. And if somebody cuts 15% of our electricity, we can switch on again our coal power plants, for example, which we hopefully have switched off at that time, and then we are still safe again. But the real point to me is, first of all, you need, of course, international agreements that the money which you invest is safe in a way. But the European money is only part of it. There are all the Arabian countries which have, in some areas, even more money than the Europeans. Also, the Chinese might be interested to invest in that. And at the moment, the Europeans still have the ideas and are technologically further than the other countries. So I see it as a chance. Now it's a window of opportunity that we invest in that, so that we finally can determine the way how it is operated.
It's a chicken and an egg, isn't it, with stability questions? Because countries, however good they may find the idea, are unlikely to. They're worried about the impact in terms of their impact on the region, as well as what they might get out of it. Best case analysis, great. Worst case analysis, disastrous new James Bond movie. You know?
I like to compare it with the problem we had in Germany with France for like 100 years ago, which were
well, that didn't go so well for a while. You know?
I don't know how it was in Britain. We were really enemies. Yeah, a French person was at least as bad as some people nowadays believe Arabian peoples are. And then we had this Montanunion, I don't know the English word, that with coal and steel you made a cooperation. And by this economic cooperation, the two countries grew together, and finally the European community.
You've got a new
And
1948 model in your mind.
Yeah. So that is the idea behind it, because if there are political instabilities, we will have problems anyway. So we shouldn't think about how to block that, but how to get rid of this political.
Interesting. Has anyone any responses, questions to that? Please stick a hand in the air. I see one in the second row. If you could just introduce yourself when you ask your question. Thank you.
Simon Tabelem from Realis. One question: you didn't speak about the business aspect of this model, of this new approach, because one of the key motivation normally for this kind of project is who's going to operate it on a business scale. So is it just you're assuming that it's going to be something like philanthropic, or is there any kind of business model?
The Desertec Foundation doesn't want to earn money with it, but the Desertec Industrial Initiative, all these companies are part of it because they want to earn money with it, and they believe the North African market is a big growing market with young people and a growing industry in future. And that, I think, is a motivation for these companies to join the Desertec project. Yeah, there's no company which is there because they think it's a good idea. They just want to get money out of it. And we believe that it's possible, not in the next 10 years, but once it is settled, all the regulations are settled, the international political regulations are there, at some point then it will be a free market model after 2035 or something is what they expect. Until this time, you have to put money in from the governments, basically.
I'd love to take a couple more questions at the back, so I will take them together if I could, Michael, and then maybe you could deal with them together. There were a couple of hands up at the back, I think.
I'm involved in a couple of solar energy projects.
And who you are as well, if it's not a secret.
Gerard Thompson from City and Westminster Corporate Finance. Involved in a couple of solar energy projects, one of which is involved in the desert. And the big problem that, this is the Indian desert, up in Rajasthan. And one of the big problems that we've found is the scarring, or if you will, of the solar panel fascia, and that which limits their life and changes the entire financial dynamics of how these things can do. Do you have any solutions to prevent the scarring of the fascia of these solar panels?
Great, we got that one. Do you mind if we just, because I think we got the idea of that one, I would just like to try and take another question if I could. I think there was one on the other side of the room. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. If I accept your premise on a super grid,
give us your name or where you're from.
Tom Sikorsky from Blue Water Energy. If I accept your premise on a super grid, which is arguably distributing power more efficiently, wouldn't you evolve then to the lowest cost power source across that? And wouldn't that be hydro and nuclear? And how would that compare to this initiative? I would think, just like American gas, it would make renewables pretty quickly.
Yes, maybe I should just shortly try to answer that. The first question was on the degradation of solar panels. The solar thermal power plants, which is one of the technology, is running in the US since the 70s without problems. So they are stable in the desert environment. For the rest, of course, there has to be development going on, and but these technical problems are not the main issues. Yeah, the costs are going down, and the question is how high the quality should be and how long these things should work to be cost effective.
Are you saying he's got the wrong sort of solar panels? You did say they were scratchy. The gentleman who asked about the degradation of the solar panels, are you just suggesting it's an issue of purely choosing the right things, or that
there is technological research going on to harden the surfaces, for example. Yeah, but these are all technical issues which I don't believe are a showstopper. The other question on the supergrid, I think for the Desertec idea, the main point here is to have the supergrid. That is even more important than to have solar power from deserts. The supergrid allows to have renewable energies with all the fluctuations which are averaged out to some extent. So Desertec not only wants to have solar power from the desert, but also mainly wind energy from the North and Baltic Sea as one of the important ingredients. And if the wind is here in the British area strong, then at the same time in Scandinavia it can be low, and by having this supergrid, these things average out. In addition, if you have wind energy in Morocco, you have the trade winds, which are very stable. Also, that is an important source of energy, which is integrated into this grid. So the supergrid is the first thing. The second thing is then the solar thermal power plants in Africa. At the moment, and you ask about gas and nuclear energy. Of course, you can put nuclear energy into the grid, but that is, of course, not the idea of Desertec. Yeah, we can have a debate on if nuclear power is useful or not. I told you, if you want to get rid of the world energy problem with nuclear energy, you have to build one nuclear reactor every day for 40 years, and alone from the number of engineers you have, it will not be possible to do it this way. That's why we believe you need a technology which is as simple as possible and as safe as possible, because you need these multiple copies of this technology. Yeah, but this is a long debate.
Mike, I'm going to let you off the spot there before you before we have to have the next meeting on nuclear. But thank you very much indeed, yeah. Michael Düren.